Okay guys, so this is going to be evaluating trigonometric functions using the unit circle in your trig chart example problems. So from the previous lessons, we've learned that we labeled the quadrants according to this pattern right here. Quadrant 1 is alpha, quadrant 2 is 180 minus alpha and pi minus alpha if you're in radians. Quadrant 3 answers are going to be 180 plus alpha or pi plus alpha if you're in radians. Quadrant 4 is going to be 360 minus alpha or 2 pi minus alpha. Okay, so that's our general information. Now what we're going to talk about is something called ASTC. Okay, and I've already kind of labeled this before, so A, S, T, and C. So we can remember all students take calculus, or all strippers take cash, okay? Hopefully your parents aren't listening to this right now, but it'll definitely stick. So what this saying means is that all trig functions are positive in quadrant 1. Anything dealing with sine is positive in quadrant 2, okay? So we know from our previous lesson that sine and cosecant go together, okay? They're reciprocals of one another, so they're going to have the same signs that are positive. Tangent, anything with tangent or cotangent is going to be positive in quadrant 3, and cosine is going to be positive in quadrant 4. Okay, so cosine and secant are reciprocals of each other, so they go together. So our steps when we're evaluating trig functions without using a calculator, this is the main way you're going to do it, is we're going to draw our angle. So we should know how to do that by now. We're going to identify the reference angle. We should know how to do that. Remember, your reference angle is the closest angular distance to the x-axis. Remember, for reference angles, if you land on your x-axis, your reference angle is 0. And if you land on the y-axis, your reference angle is pi over 2. So keep that in mind. We're going to use our trig chart, and then we're going to apply all strippers take cash or all students take calculus. Okay, so our first step is to draw our angles. Okay, so let's start with our example problems. So our first example problem, cosine of 210. Okay, so since we're in degrees, we're going to label this like that. And we're just looking to see what quadrant we're going to be in. Okay, so 210 lands us in quadrant 3. Okay, we are 30 degrees past the x-axis right here, so our reference angle is 30 degrees. Now, we're going to go to our trig chart. So cosine of 30 degrees. Cosine of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. So I'll write that down. Your last step is to use ASTC, okay? So quadrant 3. The only things that are positive in quadrant 3 are tangent and cotangent. So it would be negative. Square root of 3 over 2, and that's your answer. That's how you do it. Okay, next one. Cotangent of 7 pi over 4. Okay, so we're in radians, so this is going to be pi over 2. This is pi, 3 pi over 2, and 0 and 2 pi. Now we're in fourths, so I'm going to multiply the left point and the right point by 4 over 4. So I see that 7 pi over 4 is short of 8 pi over 4, so it's going to land us in quadrant 4. Okay, so our reference angle when we're dealing with pi's is usually the fraction, so it's pi over 4. Now I'm going to go to my trig chart. Cotangent of pi over 4 is 1. So I'll write the 1. And then the only things that are positive in quadrant 4 are cosine and secant. Cotangent is not one of those, so it's going to be negative. That's your answer, negative 1. Okay, cosecant of 150 degrees, so we're going to draw it. Okay, so 150 degrees is going to be short of 180. So it'll be in quadrant 2. Your reference angle is the distance away from the x-axis, so it is 30 degrees. Okay, so 30 degrees, because it would take 30 degrees to get it to 180. So we're going to go to our trig chart. Cosecant of 30 degrees. So cosecant of 30 degrees is 2. And we're going to use our all strippers take cash. So anything dealing with sine or cosecant is positive in quadrant 2. We're dealing with cosecant, so it's going to be a positive 2. Now, I always like to write the positive sign on there because that way I know I checked my ASTC. Okay? On to next page. Sine of negative 5 pi over 4. So our first step is to draw it. Okay, we're going negative direction, so okay, so we're in fourths, so we're going to multiply this by 4 over 4, this by 4 over 4, so it's negative 8 pi over 4. Okay, so negative 5 pi over 4 is going to be past 4 pi over 4, so it's going to land us in quadrant 2. Now this negative just tells you what direction you draw the angle. Okay, so it has nothing to do with the ASTC step. Okay, your reference angle is going to be pi over 4. Remember, to find the reference angle for that, we just cover up that. It's pi in the fraction. Okay, and then we're going to go read sine of pi over 4 from our trig chart. So sine of pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2. And it should be positive. Oops, sorry, wrong paper. So it's positive because anything in quadrant 2 dealing with sine or cosecant is positive in quadrant 2. Okay, so it's positive. Secant of 240 degrees. Okay, so this is 90 degrees. This is 180 degrees, 270, and 0 and 360. Okay, so 240 degrees is going to land you in quadrant 3. Your reference angle, it's 60 degrees past the x-axis right here. So your reference angle is 60 degrees. Now we're going to go read from our trig chart. Secant of 60 degrees is 2. Okay, and then all strippers take. Anything dealing with tangent and cotangent is positive in quadrant 3. So it's going to be negative because it's not dealing with tangent or cotangent. Tangent of 5 pi over 2. Okay, so we're in radians, so this is pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 0 and 2 pi. So we're going to multiply the fractions on the left and right points. So one full circle will get us 4 pi over 2. And then I have an extra pi over 2 to go, so I'm going to land on the positive y-axis. So when we land on the y-axis, your reference angle is pi over 2. And we're going to go read from our trig chart. Tangent of pi over 2 is undefined. So we just write undefined. Now, there's no positive undefined or negative undefined. It's just going to always be undefined. Okay, cosecant of negative 120 degrees. Okay, so this is going to be 90 degrees. This is 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and 0 and 360 degrees. Oh, we're going negative direction, my bad. Sorry. That happens occasionally. It's going to happen to you guys too, so just be careful. Make sure you're paying attention. Okay, so negative 120 degrees will land you in quadrant 3. your reference angle, okay, should be 60 degrees because I'm 60 degrees away from the x-axis. Cosecant of 60 degrees. We're going to go read from our trig chart. Cosecant of 60 degrees is 2 square roots of 3 over 3. And we are in quadrant 3, so all strippers take. Okay, it's not tangent or cotangent, so it's negative. Okay, sine of 5 pi over 3. Try and get my graphs in a little bit better spot. That's why I hate typing out notes. Okay, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 0, 2 pi. I'm in thirds, so I'll multiply this point by 3 over 3 and this point by 3 over 3. So we get 6 pi over 3. I'm dealing with 5 pi over 3, so it's going to be short of 6 pi over 3. Your reference angle when you're in radians is always pi in the fraction. Okay, so I'm going to go read from my trig chart. Sine of pi over 3 is going to be square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and I'm landing in quadrant 4, so all strippers take cash. It's not cosine or secant, so it's going to be negative. Okay, tangent of 540 degrees. We're in degrees, so this is 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and 0 and 360. Okay, so one full circle is going to be 360 degrees. And if we don't know that 540 minus 360 is 180, it's going to land back over here. Okay, so if it lands on the x-axis, we said that our reference angle is going to be 0. Our alpha is 0. So tangent of 0 is 0. Okay, so tangent of 0 is 0. Okay, and once again, 0 doesn't have a sign, so just write 0. Okay, cotangent of 2 pi over 3. Pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 0 and 2 pi. Okay, we're in thirds. Okay, so 2 pi over 3 is going to land me in quadrant 2, like that. Reference angle is pi over 3. Now we're going to go to our trig chart. Cotangent of pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 3. And we landed in quadrant 2, so all strippers. It's not going to deal with sine or cosecant, so it's going to be negative. There's a lot of negative ones. Okay. Secant of 585 degrees. Okay, so this is 90 degrees, 180, 270, and 0 and 360. Okay, so one full circle is 360 degrees. And if I subtract out 360 from that, so 585 minus 360 is going to be 225. So 225 would put us over here. Now our reference angle, it's 45 degrees past 180. So our reference angle is 45 degrees. Okay, I'm going to go to my trig chart. Secant of 45 degrees, square root of 2. Okay, and all strippers take. Take is going to be dealing with tangent or cotangent, so it's going to be negative. Okay, on to the last page of example problems for this section. Okay, so cosine of 11 pi over 6. Okay, so we're in radians, so we're going to do pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 0 and 2 pi. We're in sixes, so we're going to multiply this point by 6 over 6. So we get 12 pi over 6. 11 pi over 6 is short of 12 pi over 6, so it's over here. Our reference angle is going to be pi over 6. We're going to go to our trig chart. Cosine of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 2. Okay, all strippers take cash. Cash deals with cosine secant, so it's going to be positive in quadrant 4, like that. Cotangent of 630. Okay, so this is 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, 0 and 360. Okay, so one full circle is 360. So 630 minus 360 comes out to be 270. So it lands down there. If our angle lands on the y-axis, our reference angle is 90 degrees, or pi over 2 radians. And then cotangent of 90 degrees is 0. Okay, and 0 doesn't have a sign, so we're just going to leave it like that. Sine of negative 5 pi over 2. Okay, I'm going the negative direction, so make sure we take care of that. Negative pi over 2, negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, and this is going to be 0, negative 2 pi. Okay, we're in halves, so this is negative 2 over 2, negative 4 pi over 2. Okay, so one full circle is going to be negative 4 pi over 2, and then we're going to land down here on the negative y-axis. Okay, so when we do our reference angle is going to be pi over 2. We're going to go to our trig chart. Sine of pi over 2 is 1. Now pay attention to this. Now, I'm always going to say this, whether we're in pre-calc, calculus, or physics. Sine goes with y, cosine goes with x, okay? So since I landed on the negative y-axis, I'm dealing with sine. My x-coordinate is going to be negative. My y-coordinate is going to be a negative because I land on the negative y-axis. So it's going to come out to be a negative 1, okay? And I will explain something in just a second also to you guys at the end of the video. So cosine of negative 420. So negative degrees, we're going to be going clockwise. Okay, so 360 degrees is going to be one full circle. And so 360 from this is going to be 60 degrees. So it'll look like that. We're 60 degrees away from the from the x-axis. So our reference angle is going to be 60 degrees. Cosine of 60 degrees, we go to our trig chart, is 1/2. Okay. And all strippers take cash. We're in quadrant 4. Cosine is positive in quadrant 4, so it's going to be a positive 1/2. Okay, last one. Cosecant of 11 pi over 3. Okay, so this is pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 0 and 2 pi. So we're in thirds. So we're going to multiply our left and right point by 3 over 3. Okay, so one full circle gets us 6. And I have 5 left over, so 5 pi over 3 is going to land us over here in quadrant 4. Our reference angle is going to be pi over 3. We're going to go to our trig chart. Cosecant of pi over 3 is 2 square root of 3 over 3. All strippers take cash. Okay, so cosecant is going to be dealing with sine. Okay, it's not cosine or secant. So it's not positive quadrant 4, so it'll be negative. Okay, so we need to make sure that what we know, what the A stands for, what the S stands for, what the T stands for, and what the C stands for. That's super important, and it's a key part of doing this lesson. Now, things are called the unit circle. And especially like if you're trying to memorize, you know, when it lands on the X and Y axis. This is the point 1, 0. This is the point 0, 1. This is the point negative 1, 0. And this is the point 0, negative 1. Now, things are called unit because they have a radius or distance of 1. So the unit circle is a circle that has a radius of 1, okay, as you can see from this picture. So if I land on the x-axis, on the positive x-axis, my x-coordinate is 1, 0. So say I'm saying, what is the cosine of 0? Well, it's 1 because I'm at this point right here. Say I'm looking for what is the sine of pi over 2. Well, sine goes with y, and pi over 2 is right here, this angle, so the y coordinate is 1. Say I'm asking what is the sine of 3 pi over 2. Okay, so sine goes with y, 3 pi over 2 is down here, so it's the y coordinate of negative 1. So sometimes this helps you, if you draw this out, to memorize those ones that land on your x-axis. Otherwise, x or y-axis. Otherwise, just use your trig chart. You have to memorize your trig chart. You have to memorize your trig chart. You have to memorize your trig chart. I, for the most part, will always give you a blank trig chart for your test or quiz that we need to. You will be expected to know this day 1 of calculus. So you need to make sure you memorize and understand how to do unit circle questions. Thanks, and have a good night.